Geordie Journo's back as a duo at the Newcastle United Media Centre. It's been a while, Jordan.
It has. Felt like a long time. It's good to have you back alongside
Flying
us, Dom.
duo.
Flying duo.
As a pair. Here to bring you the latest from Eddie Howe's press conference and move things forward, looking ahead to the match against Nottingham Forest on Sunday. High flying Nottingham Forest as we're flying back together. But yeah, Jordan, as always, we'll start on the injury front. What was Eddie Howe saying?
No changes apart from Jacob Murphy's back, which is
Huge boost.
It's a big
He's
boost.
missed the two best wins of the season, but now he's back.
Yeah, they've got two right forwards back now, recognised right forwards, and I don't think either of them will probably start at the weekend. But yeah, injury news. They've got a player back. That's good news. Everything else is the same. Jamal Lascelles, Sven Botman, one of your questions. Sven Botman ahead of Lascelles. Sounds like Lascelles will probably be next year. Botman
possibly the same by the looks of it. Should be back in training by within the next month or so, Eddie Howe was saying. So yeah, I asked Jamal Lascelles, because this is a Liam one, he wants justice for Jamal Lascelles, because everyone's asking about Sven Botman, when is he back? Lascelles is the captain. You've got to ask about him too. So yeah, Jamal Lascelles a bit further behind, still seems like months away from a return for both of them though. So yeah, that's the injury situation as Eddie Howe put it. And yeah, no real changes. Kieran Trippier, Callum Wilson back after the international break, you expect. You hope, fingers crossed.
We'll see. We've heard that one before.
Yes, but West Ham game, we'll hope.
Yeah.
These international breaks, and that was your question, seem to... Callum Wilson's always back after the international break, but which international break?
Yeah.
Hopefully this is the one.
There's been two already, and he's not been back for the others. So both your third time lucky with the third international break of the season. I'm not going to go on a rant early doors, but ridiculous. It's a ridiculous amount of international breaks. But anyway, I might save a little rant at the end, but I think I've already done that in a previous video. So
sorry, I had the bag. It's a carrier bag. It's swinging. It's
I don't want to pick it up on the mic just in case.
No, I'll call it there. It's the lovely new tripod, which has the nice features, but yeah, carrier bag, the wrong choice. So
Morrison's.
Classic.
Any Morrison shower?
Why not?
I'm more of an Asda man. Can you do that? Nah, we'll move. Sorry,
Sponsored by.
We'll talk about football. Sorry, I was going to ask if you use a scan and go, but
no.
We usually save this till the end.
Yes. Bring it back. Eddie Howe press conference, looking ahead to Forest. On the sort of striker subject, we touch on Callum Wilson. A lot made about Chris Wood. A lot made about Elliot Anderson. Chris Wood, great start of the season. One of the top scorers in the Premier League. I've said to you, he scored 22 goals since the start of last season, since his move from Newcastle became permanent for £15 million in the summer of 2023. 22 goals in the Premier League. Alexander Isak's only scored 24, just to put it into context.
From last season?
Yes.
Really?
Yes, so Chris Wood has scored 2 fewer goals in the Premier League.
In the Premier League, sorry,
Isak.
because I was thinking Isak got 25 goals, but of course cup goals, sorry.
So, interesting.
Yeah. I can't believe they sold Chris Wood. It's scandalous. I can't believe they got rid of Chris Wood.
I know, but Eddie Howe can.
Yeah, I hope people can sense me sarcasm. I know I've got the same tone for everything that I speak like, but
well, some people can take what we say in videos very literally, so we've got to stress that
I'm not
sometimes it is tongue-in-cheek.
I think anyone that says Newcastle shouldn't have sold Chris Wood in that January transfer window is trying to rewrite history, because at the time we all said it was a good deal. I think Chris Wood had 80 months left on his contract. He just turned the other side of 30, wasn't scoring goals. You had Isak and Wilson who were fit at the time. Isak wasn't, he just came back wasn't he? And then of course you had that at the end of the season when Isak and Wilson were fit and they scored goals to get Newcastle in the Champions League. So if anyone says that they shouldn't have sold Chris Wood, I think you're lying to yourself, because it felt like a good deal at the time. For the first 6 months, Forest fans thought Newcastle had their pants down, whereas maybe tables have turned a little bit where it's like, well, was £15 million that good of a deal? I'd still say it was, because he's 30. Is he 32? He's banging form, but he scored 5 goals for Newcastle.
Would he have reached anywhere near those figures?
And he wouldn't have played. He wouldn't have played games. I mean, he would have at the moment with Callum Wilson injured. But when them two are fit, Chris Wood is the third choice, and they made a choice. They had three strikers. Chris Wood wanted to leave at the time because he wanted to play regular first team football. Got a longer contract at Forest, better terms for him as I say, as he enters the twilight years of his career. So for me, it just made total sense. It still does now, even though, as I say, he's banging form, scored out at St James's Park on Boxing Day. And I wouldn't be surprised if he scores on Sunday as well. Yeah. But I will die on the hill that they were right to sell Chris Wood.
I think it was great business at the time. With the power of hindsight and what Callum Wilson has not offered since, I'd go maybe Chris Wood, just because he stays fit relatively. I know he had an injury at the early part of his Nottingham Forest career, and I think he missed maybe 5 or 6 games last season with a hamstring injury. I think he played 31 games last season.
He didn't play against Newcastle in the City ground fixture.
No.
And he didn't. Well, he's on loan at the time. I think he was actually in there at the time anyway, the season before anyway. Sorry.
So he's missed a few games, but still played 31 games for Forest this season. Played every game so far this season for them. So just that availability is a big strength, and keeping Alexander Isak managing his minutes important, because Newcastle the past year or so have felt the knock-on impact of not having Callum Wilson available by Alexander Isak then getting injured. So while Callum Wilson, we've got to recognise, is probably levels ahead of Chris Wood in terms of ability, availability, as Anthony Gordon puts it, is the best ability. And if you were given a choice, maybe
it's hindsight.
In hindsight, you go, would it have been more beneficial to sell Callum Wilson when his stock was very, very high at the time? He just scored 18 Premier League goals, and keep Chris Wood? I think there might have been, people would have kicked off if that had happened.
Oh, absolutely. If it was Callum Wilson leaving that January instead of Chris Wood, then there would have been hell on, because at the time when Callum Wilson showed it, at the back end of that season, he was incredible. Him and he's at the amount of goals that the scored. It just so happens since then that they've kept a striker that has barely kicked the ball, well, since last summer, I would argue.
Managed double figures last season, which just shows his quality. But Eddie Howe was asked, I thought it was quite funny. Well, it's not funny, but like in an ironic way, do you miss Chris Wood? And Eddie Howe said, we'll miss Callum Wilson.
We miss Callum Wilson.
We'll miss his qualities.
Look, we're not talking about Chris Wood. I mean, maybe we are, because it's a former striker who was ultimately one of the most informed strikers in the Premier League. But if Callum Wilson is fit in scoring goals, we're not sitting here now talking about Chris Wood. It's just the way circumstances have played out. It happens, but at the time they were right to do the deal. Hindsight, maybe you would reconsider and go, well, you want a player that can play back up to Isak and play games and is fit and available. But in terms of quality, as you said it there, I agree. Callum Wilson is levels above Chris Wood.
Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Who should Newcastle have sold, or what do you think of Chris Wood? What do you make of his time? Because Eddie Howe, I thought, we're talking about rewriting a history. Eddie Howe was keen to praise Chris Wood's impact, although his impact, probably glad Liam's not here, because he had a few things to say about Chris Wood and his limitations. But his impact at Newcastle was limited, let's say.
Eddie Howe credited Chris Wood as a part of the transformation, which,
key part.
I suppose if you're looking at it from a team point of view, they did accelerate very quick, and for the year of Chris Wood being at the club, they went from battling relegation to mounting a top 4 challenge. So if you want to look at it as a team point of view,
great,
he did. He scored 5 goals.
Brilliant.
He scored 5 goals, which is a very, very low amount. And I said to you in the room before, if Chris Wood was still here now, I'd be shocked if he got another 5 goals. So he wouldn't have played.
I know.
And he would have played games because of Callum Wilson, but he wouldn't be the first choice striker as he is at Forest. Isak is. We talk about Callum Wilson being levels above Chris Wood. Alexander Isak is light years ahead of Chris Wood.
2 goals.
I know, You look at the stats, but you judge it from what you see from a player.
Test,
maybe he's going for a really good purple patch. You use an example of Almiron when he went for an unbelievable purple patch, but then I wouldn't say regress, but went back down to the usual levels that we usually expect to see from Miguel Almiron. I don't think the Chris Wood form will last forever, but look, maybe it might. I don't know.
Prove us wrong, Chris.
Yeah. He was a really good pro.
Good lad.
I think he did do a job for the club. You can't deny that. I'm not totally dissing him here. I don't want to sound like I'm doing that, because he did come in and do a job. he helped keep them up. He was the sort of the lead striker to help keep them up, and but he's on the signees act in the summer. They had Wilson. He just naturally dropped below that. And when you talk about a world of PSR and needing to sell,
especially a player over the age of 30 as well.
Yeah, as I say, I totally understand why they did the deal. It's just it's just a shame that he's went and scored a few goals. But
Eddie Howe said he likes to see players go on and do well, which
he said he was delighted.
I think as fans you probably almost feel the opposite slightly. You never want to see a player you sell go on and
How do you feel about Chris Wood's form? Because I'm totally unaffected.
I quite like it.
No, I'm quite happy for him, but I feel unaffected. Where I think Elliot Anderson's maybe a little different, because he was a player that you definitely didn't want to sell, and I see no merit to selling Elliot Anderson, whereas with Chris Wood I did.
And I think Eddie Howe recognised that the only merit to selling Elliot Anderson is it avoided a points deduction for Newcastle United. And Eddie Howe pointed at the contrast between the two, where Chris Wood was just the best move for all parties. Chris Wood got his game time. Newcastle recouped some of the money they'd spent on him for a player who wasn't really in first team contention in terms of starting games. Elliot Anderson was just sort of hitting form back end of last season after a long time out with injury, and you felt like this is a big season coming up. I remember we did might have been a Shots TV video maybe 2 days before he was sold, and it was just sort of like the news was sort of creeping in, and I was like, should I say it's a big season ahead for Elliot Anderson? Thankfully held our tongue, because I don't think that video went out until the Monday and he'd been sold. And I was like, thank God I didn't actually say that, and I went with Tino Livramento instead. And because it felt like this was a big season, and it, as it happens, is a big season. He's just doing it at Forest, which was probably a good move for him in terms of he gets starts for Forest, or he gets more regular game time for Forest, and Forest are reaping the rewards, and so is he. Yeah,
the national headlines after this press conference will be that Eddie Howe believes that Elliot Anderson is good enough to play for England. And you wouldn't be having those conversations if he was still at Newcastle, because he wouldn't have got given the opportunities. You look at that midfield now and how packed it is. Tonali coming back, that would have just dropped Anderson down the pecking order even more. Having said that, though, I still would have kept him, because I think he's a really talented player, young player. But they did what they had to do, didn't they? And unfortunately, he was the one that sort of paid the price. It's one of them where they probably got by without him because they've got so many options in midfield. But it would just be nice to have him because of what he's shown now at Forest, and he has got that in his locker. But I do think he wouldn't have done that here. I think Sean Longstaff's called it a few times in the interview, where you almost need that move to. I think he said it at Anderson specifically, where he's not the Newcastle Elliot Anderson anymore, the Geordie Elliot Anderson. He's went away and got away from Newcastle, and ultimately, his first couple of months at Forest has been outstanding, one of their key men. So fair play to him. It's just Eddie Howe said it, I think, before the Forest game in the cup, where it was. Did he use the word he was gutted, or to see him go? I didn't want to sell him, but it had to happen, sadly. But I'm happy. I'm happy to see a young lad doing well. You wouldn't have. I don't think you would have done that here. But it would have been nice to have him. Yeah, if I don't think I'm making the point very well, but
no, you want to keep him around because he's an academy graduate who you felt his best years very much so as a 21-year-old were ahead of him, and you hoped he would have fulfilled his potential at Newcastle. Who knows, one day he could come back, but you're pleased for him, but there's a bit of like, if only we didn't have to get rid of him, or Newcastle didn't have to get rid of him. And it shows the problem with PSR, and Eddie Howe alluded to it, where academy graduates are you're incentivised to sell them, and Sean Longstaff can get on his contract situation where Newcastle will trigger an extension in Sean Longstaff's contract, not necessarily to give him a long-term deal or anything, but purely to protect that asset. So if they were to sell him in a future transfer window, they can recoup a decent amount of pure profit in terms of transfer money in PSR.
Exactly that. He's got that option where it gives them a year. They can either decide to give him a longer term deal in the summer, or they might even sell him on. So that's the thing with the academy graduates. It's the downfall of PSR. I don't think you should ever be incentivised to sell you. But why should a club spend years and years developing a player, bring them through the system, and then be encouraged to sell them because it balances the book in terms of PSR. That rule just stinks to the high heaven.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And it's annoying from Newcastle's perspective because I think with Elliot Anderson and with Sean Longstaff to a degree, okay, he's definitely had dips and peaks and troughs in his Newcastle career in terms of getting in and out of the team. But Elliot Anderson, in terms of his progress, they managed that perfectly. They helped him progress with the 21s. He got a little taste of first team football. He went out on loan and then came back more or less a first team ready player, very nearly anyway, and then managed to get in the team and get regular football. They managed that perfectly, and it's one of the few academy players that have managed to do that. So they've reaped the rewards in some way financially, but haven't seen the fruits of the labour in terms of on the pitch as such, because ultimately he left Newcastle without scoring a Premier League goal, albeit you go back to that one at Forest.
The one at Forest, aye.
Of all places, which should have stood. And then another academy graduate, Sean Longstaff, he was penalised for offside, wasn't it?
There's something about Forest.
Shocking. But yeah, moving on, Forest's obviously a big test as well, flying high.
Big.
I think we've said in our previous videos, for as much as progress Newcastle have made against Chelsea and Arsenal, the only real sign of progress is if you carry that on. Because at home, you back Newcastle against anyone. Away from home, I think it's 7 wins in the Premier League since the start of last season away from home. They need to be translating that form at home, those performances at home, away at Forest, a tricky away game.
I would be so disheartened now after watching 2 very, very good performances where you're seeing glimpses of the Newcastle that was seen 2 years ago, to then put in an absolute stinker against Forest. That would really, really dishearten me, because I feel like they've been able to build a platform away from St James's Park, and I think the true challenge comes now is, can you maintain that platform away from home at the place where they've got a decent record, a team that are flying high in the Premier League. If you can get a result there, then you speak about momentum and confidence, and I think getting a result there, that would be massive. I think obviously the 2 results last season could be a turning point, but I think if you go and get a result at Forest and you head into international break 1 point behind them, touching the European places again, I think that could be a real building block there. But when they come back heading into a busy December, because they've got to try and build some momentum from somewhere, and that's the thing I would say about Newcastle. How I've felt this year watching Newcastle is momentum's been very stop-start, where I think you need to sort of sustain. It's
probably been the thing of whole year really, isn't it? 2024, and injuries stifled that, but injuries this season have been fairly tame. It's all been those legacy injuries, as Eddie Howe would put it, that have carried over from last season, with the exception of like little niggles here and there, and then Kieran Trippier, who's now...
I think you probably look at the injury list, and I mean, Livramento had a really good game at the weekend. As I say several times, I still think Trippier's still there. Although
you're clinging to that.
I know, I really am. I'm just like, if you look at the players injured, they aren't really missing.
Callum Wilson's the one they're missing, really, I'd say.
Well, Botman's the big one, because he's the one that gets into the starting 11.
The team,
Callum Wilson, you miss Callum Wilson because you don't want to keep flogging Alexander Isak.
Don't say that.
No, don't use that in the press conference. And then Trippier is I still think he's ahead of Livramento, but
he hasn't been a huge miss. Which
he hasn't.
He has been a big miss. Although you go back to the relegations battle season, Emil Kraft came in and Kieran Trippier wasn't as big a miss as we first feared. So it's funny.
Maybe I've got me.
It's such
Trippier blinkers on.
Yeah, it's such a key player in the side. Kieran Trippier is still a key player for Newcastle and has been since he arrived. Whenever he has been injured, hasn't been a huge miss, I'd say. Though Eddie Howe did say about Tino Livramento, performance-wise, improved the past couple of games. Still has that end product to find, which Kieran Trippier definitely brings.
Yeah, and that's the point I've always made with Livramento. I think his Arsenal performance is arguably probably his best in Newcastle. I mean, I might be really short memory for saying that. He's had some really good games.
Had some really good cup performances.
Yeah, Manchester City in the cup last year, obviously the one at Old Trafford when he's run the length of the pitch to set up Almiron. But in terms of defensive display, when he had to go up against Gabriel Martinelli, who's been in great form this season, I would say that's probably his best defensive display, and I would say that for Lewis Hall as well. But I think, I think that's probably the difference between Trippier and Livramento, is he does give you that final third quality. You can put a ball in the box, all right, maybe set pieces or up for debate of late, but you know, Eddie Howe did say that one of the main reasons why they don't score from set pieces because they don't have Sven Botman and they don't have Kieran Trippier taking them. So I do think he gives you a little bit more in the final third. But you're right in what you're saying. I think that they haven't really missed him. They actually probably missed him more when he was on the bench at the start of the season, when you felt like he needed to come back in. But his absence is, Livramento has performed very well. But again, with him, I think he probably one that needs to sort, probably like a lot of his teammates and the pattern away in Newcastle being the season start showing a bit of consistency.
Yeah, it's a shame though for Livramento, who'd been in the England squad, still yet to earn his first England cap, but had been in the past 2 England squads. Then his performances had improved, like the past couple of games before the England squad was announced, and then he's not in it. But then Lewis Hall rewarded, as we alluded to in our previous videos. I think that was a no-brainer, and Lewis Hall deserves his spot in that side.
I think it's a shame for Livramento because I think you'll think about England's right-back options and they've probably got quite a few, whereas England left-back, they're crying out for someone to play left-back. They don't have, or they do, in Luke Shaw. He's the best English left-back, but he's never fit.
I think Lewis Hall.
No, so I was going to come on that.
Sorry.
But in tournaments, they've always turned to... You look at the World Cup in the summer, they were playing Trippier left back. I think there's someone else ended up playing down that side as well before. It was just Trippier left back, and then Shaw came back in for the final. Came on as a sub in the semi-final, played the final. But then you don't have Luke Shaw, you don't have an out-and-out left back. And Lewis Hall, for me, is the emergence of him has been incredible. And I think if he can go and make an impression on this camp, he's probably in there for the long. Yeah, he's probably when's the next World Cup in a couple of years. He's continues to play the way he is and he makes an impression. He means settle. That's probably his spot, because Luke Shaw's not going to arrive because he's going to be injured all the time.
He's just got to keep it up. As a young lad,
that's
you
a problem.
You can rise very quickly and just as quickly go back down. So for him, we can't get carried away based on a very good start to the season.
I'm just really heartened by his
progress.
But like to think where he was 12 months ago, he spoke about his struggles lots of times. I sat down with him in Germany at Adidas in the summer, and to hear the struggles he went through moving up as a young lad, and Eddie Howe mentioned there as well about the double sessions after, and it wouldn't have been easy for him, but he's came through that period, and I've got a huge amount of respect for him for being where he was to where he is now. It's quite the rise, and for me, seeing his mentality, I think he's a lad that can maintain it. But you're right, we don't know that about him yet. He's still very, very young. So, but from what I've seen and what I've heard from him, I think he's as I said on the last video, I think he's potentially a star in the making.
Yes.
On the last video.
Great piece of business by Newcastle after last season, calling it out almost every week. But it's also encouraging in a question Eddie Howe was asked, where we're having to be patient at the moment with Will Asula, and we've seen glimpses of him, and Eddie Howe was asked, is Lewis Hall's development, where a year ago couldn't get in the team and everyone's like, why have we signed this player? Rightly, in my opinion, asking those questions. Will Asula has barely had a sniff in terms of Premier League football for Newcastle. He's done all right in the Carabao Cup, and patience will be required for him. But Eddie Howe saying he's making good progress but still has a lot to learn. So hopefully in 12 months' time, Will Asula banging them in. Who needs Chris Wood?
This time next year it'll be Will Asula 22 goals since the start of last season. No, it's just silly talk, but
we'll wait and see.
Aye. 3 years.
Yes, well remembered. 3 years ago today, Eddie Howe became Newcastle United manager.
Memories? What's your memories of Eddie Howe? The 3 years he's been here.
I mean, you look at where the club were. The only hope they were clinging to was the fact the takeover happened, but it was still so much work and ground needed to be made up.
Yeah.
And they signed Chris Wood, and it was plain sailing from there. But no, Eddie Howe is possibly the single most important person in terms of what he's done and what he's transformed. And look, the past year has been difficult, but in terms of where Newcastle were to where he got them to in basically less than 12 months was incredible. And I think he will, whatever happens from here on out, he will always be remembered very fondly for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just now about, and Eddie Howe alluded to it, continuing that rise. The next step, if he's still here in 3 years' time, has to be.
He said that himself, didn't he?
Winning a
Like,
trophy.
Because I think he was asked about.
Just pleased to still be here,
Yeah,
was his
pleased to still be, yeah.
response.
I remember it was after Everton as well, which we didn't make too much big of a deal of, and I think it was tongue in cheek by Eddie Howe, but he was asked about Everton's new stadium. He was like, "Oh, if I'm still here next season,"
yeah.
I was like, "Oof," but
it's definitely in his mind. Where we have Premier League managers, Eddie Howe, who's longer serving them in the Premier League. You've got Pep Guardiola, Mikel Arteta, Thomas Frank and Marco Silva, but they've come up from the Championship.
Yeah.
So Eddie Howe, in terms of constant Premier League managers, is one of the longest serving, only behind two managers who've had success. Pep has had almost unprecedented success, and Mikel Arteta has turned Arsenal from where Newcastle are now to title challengers, and they've won FA Cups as well. So the only two permanent Premier League longest serving managers than Eddie Howe have won trophies, and are the two right at the top. So that is Eddie Howe's next step. That's what he has to do in the next 3 years.
The next step is the biggest, because he's took them so far very quick, and he deserves enormous credit for that. But now it's, as I say, football moves very quickly. It's about getting to that next level, and that's the most difficult challenge. It's probably naturally expectation levels rise, and it probably does among us as well when we talk.
Have to.
Yeah. I mean, when we done the video a few weeks back after the Chelsea, it's because those expectation levels rise, and you expect a little bit more because of the success that he has built, and he's built such a good model, I would say, in terms of the way they play. When Newcastle are playing the way we know they can blow anyone away.
Yeah.
But they seem to be up and down at the moment. But yeah, the Forest away on Sunday is a real opportunity to. I'm trying to think of a better term, but maybe you suggest that Newcastle United are back, if you want to say that.
They've turned a corner with the past two results. Yeah. This will be a full turnaround.
Hopefully.
Maybe I'm getting too far ahead. But yeah, you're right. I think where clubs are, they should be judged based on the standards they've set themselves, not based on something that was 3 years ago when the club were in a relegation battle. That's not really how you judge things. You judge things based on, we know how good you can be. You've set the standard, for better or worse. Can you continue to reach that standard? And hopefully Newcastle will get back to those levels. I think a win on Sunday would see them in and around the European places again. Okay, only 11 games played, but that's where you want to be.
Absolutely, and a nice Carabao Cup quarter-final look forward to as well. So maybe that elusive.
No Sean Longstaff.
I didn't know that. Did you know that?
I mean, I looked it up at the time, and fair play to friend of the channel, Craig Hope, for pointing that out. But two bookings back to back against Wimbledon and Chelsea. Yeah, you do get a ban.
I think it's daft, me.
It's harsh.
It's you get a
but
red,
then they're wiped after the quarter.
Yeah, you get Fabian Schär straight red, but then missed the Carabao Cup game as well. But then Sean Longstaff gets 2 yellows in the competition, and then misses a Carabao Cup game, but doesn't miss any Premier League games. It's just all out of the shop.
It is what it is.
It is
what it is. Red cards transcend all competitions. Yellow cards very competition specific.
It always creates confusion. I remember that time when Nick Pope got sent off, and everyone was like, "Oh no, can Nick?" I mean, it was made quite evident pretty quick when he was sent off, and I think Sky Sports clarified that he couldn't play in the Carabao Cup final, but there was like loads of people questioning.
Whereas
Bruno's another one as well.
Southampton got sent off, but because it was a red card, missed Premier League games. If he got a yellow card suspension, he wouldn't have missed any Premier League games, but he would have missed the final potentially.
Oh, did he? Is that why he got
so it was very clever from Bruno. Was it in the end? Because he didn't help Newcastle win.
I know we're waffling now, but do you not remember when that rule when he went 11 games without yellow card, and it was that final game against Spurs, and he had got booked, he would have missed 2 games, and he had got red carded, he would have missed, what was it? There was something where.
Well, Anthony Gordon last season got away with it because he was on, I think, 8 bookings. And then he got his 9th booking against West Ham, and so he was 1 booking away from a 2-match ban. But then he got booked again against West Ham, so his 10th booking, but then a red card suspension, so he went back down to 8 bookings. Missed the Everton game, but then was fine. So he avoided a 2-game suspension, which is the most genius thing I've ever seen.
But there was a situation with Bruno, and I can't get me facts right, but there was something with him as well where if he was on nine he'd be better
bookings.
for getting sent off than rather than just getting yellow cards, something like that.
Yeah, because I think we were talking about it. Bruno, just get a red. But it all worked out for the best because he avoided. He did the impossible and went 11 games without picking up a booking, which we need the likes of Fabian Schär, Dan Burn, Joe Linton, who've been key players, particularly Joe Linton in the past couple of games, to avoid those bookings because they're on 4. One more booking would see them.
Yeah, they've got it as match day 20, so they've got to go all the way to Spurs until Spurs on January 5th, I think it is.
4th or 5th, yeah, maybe.
Long time.
So yeah, we'll be covering that every step of the way. And
the yellow cards every step of the way.
I know. Check out Shields Gazette and Newcastle World because we do stories on them every week, providing
regular
updates, almost word for word updates. The situation's evolving, but yeah. If you like what we do, please remember to like, comment, share, subscribe, ring the bell for all your Geordie Journos content. There's also a thanks button. Thank you for our donation when we did the live stream the other night.
Don Anderson again.
Classy gesture.
I haven't bought the light yet, but I will. Because that was Don's request. So I will do it. So thanks for that, Don. Super thanks button below if anyone else wants to. I don't know if there's any other improvements we maybe need.
So I'm upgrade from my carrier bag, maybe.
Yeah, Don wants an upgrade from his.
Move from Morrison's to
10p carrier bag.
Move from Morrison's to Waitrose or something like that.
He wants a camera bag, right?
So yeah, we'll be at Forest. Of course, Four Rivers Financial Planning are lovely sponsor every Geordie Journos video. Check them out in the description. Yeah, we'll be at Forest, joined by Liam Kennedy, our chauffeur and boss. But yes, we'll be down there Sunday, reflecting on the game, hopefully a positive one, and we'll see you there. So if you like what we do, of course, remember, like, comment, share, subscribe, as I've already said. So I'll just wrap it up there. Thanks for watching. Cheers.